Why do you make your life more difficult?
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, yeah, I now just realized I have the computer open in the background.
Yeah, maybe we should have recorded the sound there so it would. So today the visit is in the studio of Ville Aalto, who is a sound artist, sound designer. How do you define yourself?
A bit of both. I guess I have a degree in sound design, and I've done some theater and dance, sort of very sound design oriented work, but also lately it's been more about sound art, I guess, as a separate art form.
Yeah, I guess it's a little different. There's slightly like some differences there.
Yeah. And I also kind of identify quite a bit as maybe as an electronic musician nowadays, but as a musician, like I've been playing more instruments or keyboards before, and now it's not so much anymore, but it's a part of the sort of identity still, for sure.
I have rarely had sound people on the podcast. Honestly, the majority of people are visual artists. Maybe because I'm a visual artist, so let's see how
we get along.
Yeah, I could ask you that they should make sense, but yeah, if I don't, you can just say something.
Yeah, I can correct you.
Yes. Yeah, it's a funny thing that okay, maybe disclaimer in the beginning that I'm talking a little funny. I'm doing some dental work at the moment, so that's why it's gonna take a while, but I hope it's understandable.
It's very understandable. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that you, some time ago, another guest of my podcast recommended you as a future guest, and then I was a bit like thinking about it, because when there is a visual artist, there's a lot you can show as a visual art in the video and talk about it around the visual side of things.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just feeling insecure to talk about sound since I don't really understand it that well. But recently I saw your exhibition in Muu Galleria, or should I say Center for Contemporary Art, as it's called nowadays. Yeah, and it was a really nice exhibition.
Thank you.
We can probably see some of the synths that you are working with, but in the gallery it was so much more.
Yeah, I had 17 synthesizers loaned from people, so they weren't my own, thankfully. But I made a few posts on Facebook about wanting to loan synthesizers for an exhibition, and people were very forward and very surprisingly like eager to just loan their synthesizers
for
great. The duration. Yeah, it was super nice, and met a lot of nice people and got to talk a little bit about synths, which is always nice.
I just imagined the pile of cables there that you had to deal with.
Yeah, I had to be pretty careful because they were the people who gave their cables as well, and I needed to be pretty careful of not mixing them up. So
did you have like small tape on something like this?
No, I just made notes and I tried to sort of keep them to one machine at a time. So yeah, it worked out pretty good, but at times I was sort of unsecure about I'm just gonna mix everything up, but it worked out well. And most of them have been returned already, so we're on the safe side now.
Are there so many sound artists in Helsinki? I really don't know that area so well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know it very well either. I'm kind of sort of balancing between like the music and the sound art thing all the time, and I guess I still have like much more knowledge about sort of the music or the electronic music thing rather than the sound art thing. But I mean, there's some artists for sure, but I think there's also like for the synthesizers, for example, it's a lot of hobbyists and sort of people who necessarily aren't like or people who are just playing for fun or using them in bands, or there's a lot of ways you can use a synthesizer. And
I remember some time ago there was this DIY synth event where people brought their own synths that they built.
Yeah, it also overlaps, I think, with like an interest in electronics for a lot of people. I don't have like a well, I have an interest in it, but I have no skills whatsoever when it comes to like electronics or soldering or making.
So you haven't made a synth?
No, and I don't think I will. It's somehow I mean, it's such a nice idea, but there's something about it that's like I don't know. I just screw it up somehow.
It's a bit steep curve to learn how to, I guess, initially to start doing it.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's also a very sort of different skill set, so I'd really have to do quite a bit of learning. And I think I still have quite a bit of learning to do, even with just using the ready-made synthesizers as they are. So maybe I don't need to gather any more extra learning for myself at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating that people are actually able to, like, you can actually make a synthesizer like with a very DIY approach, which is fascinating. And I'm sure it's like very, very rewarding to actually bring out the sound once you've done it. And like I've done some with the computer, like try to code a little bit of like, or used Max for Live, which is like a sort of graphical coding environment, and I made a synthesizer with that like back in school, I think. And I was very excited about, like, I actually kind of made this myself, and then it produces sound, and it's very nice.
Yeah, especially if it took a while to make it work, and then it works, and you're like,
yeah,
it works.
Yeah, and then you figure out how to maybe do something a little bit better and make it sound a bit more like what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But then in terms of actually making it sound like unique or something, then that's a whole other thing, I guess. Like you have to really dive into it for quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, and then your sounds, at least in the gallery, that were very realistic bird sounds.
Yeah.
So
that was kind of it was a very focused installation in that sense, I guess, that I tried to make everything quite realistic and didn't really stray away from that sort of basic principle. Whereas before I've been making more things that are kind of on the verge of being realistic, and then they kind of transform into clearly electronic sounds and vice versa, and that sort of thing. So yeah, this exhibition was kind of different in that respect, that it was very natural, trying to be as natural as possible.
It sounded really like bird sounds. How difficult is it to make something realistic sounding?
Well, I mean, birds aren't. I've been making, like, I think I've done used about 5 years now, sort of, to make these sort of works where there's a lot of electronic sounds imitating natural sounds. So it was very difficult at first, but now it's sort of not so difficult anymore. So it comes with practice. But I think birds are, in a way, they're on the simpler side of things to imitate in the real world, because they're singing a bit higher than, or they're, you know, the pitch is quite high. So it's a little bit easier, I think, for us to be fooled, because our sort of main area of sound recognition, I guess, is a little bit lower. So we're not super good at like discerning stuff higher up. And then also they're super complex in some ways, but like from a synthesis standpoint, I guess they're pretty simple. Like you just need something that makes a pitched noise, and then you can sort of give it the rhythm and the pitch that it does, and then that's enough to make a bird. So you don't really need to sort of go into very special synthesis techniques or anything. It's kind of, sound-wise, it's very simple. It's just the like actual accuracy of the actual birds that's then a bit hard to
I mean, for somebody who really doesn't know at all, it doesn't look easy at all.
It's kind of like learning to play an instrument in some ways, like you have to, or transcribing a solo, which is what a lot of musicians do. Like you have a solo on a record, and then people listen to it over and over and again and try to sort of learn to play it. And then this bird thing is kind of the same, but it's just a bird instead of a solo, and I'm not playing it, but I'm telling the synthesizer how to play it. But yeah, that sort of thing. So it's kind of, in a way, it's quite technical. Quite a technical approach. Like you have something that you want to imitate, and then you do it, like imitate it, and then at least for this exhibition, it was in that sense, it was quite technical, that I just made these sounds that are as close to real as possible, and then that was it for this one.
We could get back to that possibly, or some of your other works, but a bit to put stuff in context, like how did you end up in this lake of synths in the first place? Like, did you have any connections with the sounds and music, electronic music, from early on?
Yeah, well, yeah, I used to be like a very big music addict, I guess. Like I spent my teenage years very much just listening to different sorts of music, and part of it was electronic, and most of it was sort of band-driven music. But I guess I was always drawn more into electronic sounds maybe than the instrumental sounds. Like, I mean, I love guitars and drums and everything, but there's something about like the otherworldly nature of like electronic sounds, where they're not, they don't remind you of anything that's, you know, exists in the real world, I guess, which is something I was always drawn to. And then I did a lot of like electronic music as a teen, and then after that I had some band. I was more in bands, I guess, during my 20s, and made some music for bands, and which was more like, I guess, oriented towards rock music, or like progressive rock or that sort of thing. And then I think like I went to the theater academy to study sound art, and there I think the synthesizer thing really like kicked off in some way. They had some modular synths over there, and I dabbled with those quite a bit. And then, I mean, it's a pretty natural, I guess, progression from using keyboards to play, and then those a lot of those are just synthetic. And then I just got more and more interested in the sort of non-musical, I guess, sounds.
So it was like is this like a bachelor degree of sound art?
No, it's actually like well, I've got a master's degree, but it's in like a sound design for theater, I guess, is the for theater and dance. I mean, they don't specify it in the degree name, but the school is mostly about making sound design, or like producing
for performance.
Yeah, for performing arts, doing sound design for that. But then there's a lot of courses that touch on like sound art or installation art or visual art or whatever. So it's a quite varied thing, and you have a lot of things, especially in the master's phase, that you can sort of branch out to. So it's I think the bachelor thing is quite theater, dance oriented, and then you kind of, the master is
and you did your bachelor there also, or not?
Yeah, the bachelor and the master's, yes.
Do you still do sounds for theater?
Yeah, every now and then, yeah. Like I've got one theater thing coming up now for the winter, and another dance production for next year, so there's a bit of that, but it's not full time. And I kind of enjoy the variety, I guess, of concentrating on more of the sound art or the music things at times, and then sometimes getting out of the studio and making things with other people, which is quite nice every now and then, you know. I kind of
it must be a different process when you do your own
it is,
and then work for performances.
Yeah, you have to be a lot more social with the performances, obviously, and maybe also make some compromises, you know, and that sort of thing. So I think I've done okay, but I do think I recognize, especially after like working alone for a long time, it's not always easy to go into a group and then starting to, you know, the whole process is so different, and you have to everything is so different, and it's not just about the sound, you know, it's a performing arts production or whatever, and it's very different. But it's also nice because then you can use a lot of your time just watching what others do and kind of gathering up the ideas instead of constantly having to sort of steer the boat yourself, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I guess it could be sometimes a bit I wouldn't call it easier, but like just a bit lighter to work with other people and not have to think about all the aspects of the thing yourself. Yeah,
definitely, and also you don't sort of have to take the whole responsibility yourself. Like exactly. You know, it's always a group effort, and that's what the end result is going to be, and it's somehow maybe it's not as stressful in some ways.
Yeah.
Or I mean, working alone can be very unstressful also, but sometimes, especially if it's not going very well, it can be then it can be a bit hard. And
Yeah.
you start to question yourself and everything you're doing, and that doesn't really happen so much with the groups, I think, because you're kind of
You have more defined tasks there. Probably.
yeah, and you can also sort of trust the other people to deliver, and you're just part of the whole. So it's a very different thing, yeah, for sure. And I do like the fact that I can do a little bit of both. So it's a good.
It's a good exercise for your brain to
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah, and it keeps things fresh. I think, like you don't, because you can get stuck doing the same thing for a long time. And
I have
it's
usually
good
the question of stuckness to most of the people I speak with. Like, I guess you have also experienced that at some point.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I've been making. I think I've sort of been making the same like piece of art now for the last 5 years with this nature thing. Like it's just been variations, but with a very similar sort of approach. So I've made a lot of sort of surround sound works that are like played from tape for a surround sound system, and then there's like electronic music, and then there's natural sounds that are made with synthesizers, and I've made a lot of those, and it's kind of making the same thing all the time. And I really enjoyed it, sort of making the same thing over and over and refining it and coming up with different ways to kind of make the same thing over and over again. But then recently I just really, like at the beginning of this year actually, I just really realized that now I want to get away from this, and I really felt like I have no idea what I'm doing, and nothing that I did seemed sort of interesting to me anymore, and I had this very strong sense of being, well, maybe not stuck, but sort of like not being able to do or create anything that's interesting to me.
Proper creative block.
Yeah, very classic creative block, yeah. And I think I've kind of gotten at least partially away from it now, but I really had to, tell myself that this has to be the last nature work now for at least some time, and now I have to do something completely different.
So how did you pull yourself out of it? Just started doing something else?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I completely pulled myself out yet, but I'm in the process. But I've just been trying to do like other stuffs. Like I've just been playing a lot of like really a lot of sort of techno music with the synthesizers, which has been like, it's super fun and very sort of straightforward stuff in a way. So I think that's been quite beneficial to me. And then I also just came up with this work idea that's like completely elsewhere, which I applied for grants for, and then I got one now, and then it's coming like probably 2 years from now. So I'm kind of, now my sights are set on that already.
Congratulations.
So kind of, yeah, thanks. But it's super nice to, it's also very scary, but I enjoy this moment where I'm kind of like, I've done the same thing for 5 years, and now I'm doing something completely different, and it's...
Can you talk about it, or is it still like it shouldn't be talked about?
Well, I mean, it's it shouldn't be talked about too much. I think it's the essence of the whole work, but it's going to be this sort of hybrid sort of internet game / sound art event series, which is it's very much not finalized. Even though, I mean, I've got sort of like a idea of what it's going to be like, but there's a lot of questions lingering around. So
if it's going to be like for the next couple of years, of course.
Yeah.
Would be strange to have it fully finalized at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, I think, but also like I'm completely like, I have no idea what it's going to be like. But yeah, it's going to be very challenging, I'm sure, and also I'm gonna want to keep it very mystical, the whole work, even when it comes out. So maybe we shouldn't talk about it anymore.
Okay. I will be curious to when it's done and ready to be seen. Or heard.
Yeah, me too. I'm very curious. We'll see.
So has your personal works been only sound? Like, have you ever had some visual side of them?
It's been mostly sound, yeah. I've always liked the idea of just a space that is as dark as possible, and then you go in there and just listen. That's been kind of the main approach for me, I guess. But I made this work now a few years ago already, I think, which had I used this Super Collider software, which is like a audio coding software, to make a very sort of basic imitation of this bird that's thought to be extinct, but there's some recordings of its song. So I made that sort of work where you have the code running on a display, and then it's generating the bird song or the fake bird song in real time. So that had the display in there, and then this recent one had the actual machines in the exhibition space as the visual.
There were so many that it was really like impressive how many synths there are there.
Yeah, and they're very visual things with the LEDs blinking and the patch cables and knobs and everything. Yeah, so even though that, I mean, in a way it's just, I mean, I didn't think of it as something visual in the sense that it's just the machines that I used to make it that are displayed in the gallery, but I'm sure, like, obviously it's a visual thing.
It is, anyway, you go to the gallery and that's what you see.
Yeah. So, and I think it's quite essential. That's why this work was just the sort of realistic soundscape without any sort of hinting at the sort of electronic sound sources in the sound domain, because then you had the actual synthesizers in the space telling, I guess, at least trying to tell people that the sound is all electronic, so I didn't have to sort of make the sound deliver that idea anymore. Because previously I'd been making like works for tape where you see nothing but you just hear it, and then you kind of have to, or I've thought about it like that it should be, you should actually hear the sound moving from electronic to natural, and that's like part of what I wanted to convey. But then now with the machines visible, then it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
I guess this time around. Yeah,
no, I mean, it was very, very obvious that the sound comes from the synths.
Yeah, although it's not obvious, it wasn't obvious for everyone.
Really?
Yeah, no. Because, you know, like a synthesizer is, I'm sure it's not very, like, it's not something that most people, or all people at least, know what it is or what it does. So I had like some people actually asking about, like, or some people thought the sounds are, you know, a natural recording, and then the machines are doing something, I guess. But that's something that I could have done better, I think, was to sort of convey the concept to like everyone. So
it would have become too illustrative.
Yeah, I guess so.
If you tell them fully everything.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, I guess. And I mean, you know, art is always like, people take it differently. It's sorry.
Some jamming. I mean, you can show some jamming later.
Yeah, I should bring Elvi in here, and she wanted to do a jam together. That's why she got so.
Yes, when I came here, Elvi is your daughter.
Yeah.
She was very unhappy to go.
Yes, she just wanted to start jamming with the keyboards, and then she had to go eat and everything. So she got pretty upset. 3 years.
3.
Yeah.
And already jamming.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very much loved to plug cables into synths. When she was 2 years old, I think I had like more of this modular gear lying around, and she just spent like tens of minutes just plugging the cables in and taking them out. And she was quite sort of methodical about it, or she was very careful about putting them in, and I told her, you can just, when you take them out, you need to take it from the, don't pull on the cord, and she learned it pretty quick, so I was happy about that.
Soon you have to do a schedule who's using the studio.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it won't be me most of the time, I think.
Probably not, yes.
She'll overtake me very quickly.
In your work, you now have this nature theme, and the birds in particular. Do you have other themes you have been dealing with before that? Or how do you come about to creating the piece? Like, do you come up with some theme or concept or beforehand, or does it get developed along the process?
Well, like I said, I've been making the same work for 5 years now. So, in a sense, I've I got the first idea, and then I've just been. But I mean, I've always had like a like, because I just work with electronic sound and it's all instrumental, so there's no words or no no language involved whatsoever. It's all just
more abstract.
Just abstract sound with like obviously the nature sounds, but then no words involved. Then I've always usually when I've made these works, they're like fixed loop sort of works, so you have the fixed length of a kind of like a sort of composition, I guess. So I've usually had a sort of background, not story, but background sort of thing, like some sort of concept in the background, which I haven't really been worried about if it's something that is transferred to the listener, but it's just something that's, I guess, made it easier to come up with some sort of frame and some sort of structure for the works.
Yeah.
So I was concentrating more on, I guess, like some sort of evolution stories, except for example, like I made 2 records also with these synthetic birds, and the second one, for example, has like sort of a structure where it's first about evolution of life, and then sort of some kind of fragments of modern life, and then some sort of future, like some sort of estimate of what the future might be, which is impossible to do, of course, but that's sort of, on that abstract level.
Yeah.
I have some sort of like thoughts or background ideas, but I have no idea how much they're kind of discernible to the listener, and I don't think it's important either.
Yeah, I mean, especially with sound, you really cannot control what people are gonna imagine.
It's so wild. Like people are gonna hear all sorts of things, and it's been super rewarding also sometimes hearing the kind of interpretations. Like I remember I did this very first installation thing where I had like an hour-long loop of kind of musical parts and then more sound, like natural sound development oriented parts, and I think my own feeling of the kind of the sound world was this very spacey or kind of like abstract world of data and whatever, and then somebody told me when they listened to it that they heard all the beeps and stuff that's in there as like cash registers beeping in the local supermarket sort of thing. and that was very I really enjoyed that, and it was also like completely appropriate for the piece, like a very different but also equally like I was happy about that interpretation because it really fit the thing quite well. And you have sound is very
probably before that.
No, I didn't think about it, but then after that I always thought about it when I made the same beeps over and over again. It's kind of, yeah. But sound is very, very kind of personal, I think, and it's I think in general we talk about sound much less than about visual things, so it's much more kind of open to interpretation and personal, and it's got a lot to do with like your musical history, but also where you grew up in and what sort of sounds you're accustomed to and what sort of sounds like remind you of your childhood or of hard times in your life or whatever. So it's very, very personal. I mean, of course, visual art is as well, but I think maybe sound is even more kind of because it's so unverbal, or like even less verbal in some ways, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we are very, very visual beings. We just take everything almost from what we see, but maybe the sound is some more deep level there, that it's
yeah, it's maybe a bit more on the subconscious side, I guess, because it's there all the time and you're not really you maybe don't concentrate on it, but everything that you do and feel and see is sort of framed by the sound that you're taking in. And it's the same like with smells, which can be very like triggering.
I think the smell is even more basic than the sound.
Yeah, probably. And it's very like you can have these super I mean, you probably know, like you smell something and then you get this very like vivid memory, or like maybe a emotional state or whatever, and it's like you had no idea that it exists in you, and then it comes from somewhere. So maybe sound is a bit similar, but not as strong as smells. There's something about smells.
Yeah, isn't that a bit difficult then to work with sound, because it's especially when it's like a sound design for some other project, bigger project, that usually the best sound is the one you don't really even recognize somehow. Because it should be, so fluently blended with the rest of the performance or whatever it is.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure like there's lots of ways to do it, of course, but I think even if you try to sort of come forward with sound design in a theater play, for example, it's always going to be in a way secondary to the action on stage, or what the characters are saying, or the sound is in a way, even if you don't try to make it sort of unnoticeable and background sound, it's still going to be that in some ways, because of how we perceive the world and how we sort of go with the visuals and the language first, I think, and then the sound is something that kind of frames that. So yeah, I don't know if it's hard, but it's at least maybe it's something that should be taken into account somehow, that people are not going to be like primarily listening to the sound.
Yeah.
And it's also something that I realize a lot of times is something, because myself, like I'm pretty sound oriented naturally.
Obviously.
And then, I go to a theater play and I think I concentrate on the sound maybe a bit too much even. And it's like the way that I'm looking at the performance or listening to it is very different to like the average, whatever that is.
Of course.
But I don't know how much that like should be taken into account, and even if you take it into account, I think it's still guesswork, like how people are going to take it. So I guess, maybe sound is actually very easy, because you just have to make what feels good to you, and then that's all there is to it, because you can never predict how it's going to be taken. But I don't know. It's a complex issue, and not one that I feel very confident about saying anything very like clear about.
Yeah, it also probably depends on the type of project, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Not every sound project is a theater work, so.
Yeah, true. But like a lot of theater performances have at least some music, and I think this sort of kind of musical approach to sound is, I guess, something that's pretty. Maybe it makes things easier in some way to just think of the sound when it doesn't have to be in like direct correlation with the action on stage, for example. You can just think about it as music that kind of sets the tone or the atmosphere or colors the emotional impact or that sort of thing.
Yeah, the sound and music is so much more connected to the emotional.
Yeah. And I think that's like both with music and with non-musical sound. It's that's kind of, I guess, the main or the simplest approach that you can take. At least I see things that way. That it's just something, but it's something that frames and sets the emotional tone.
Yeah.
And then after that you can sort of do like more accurate stuff with like single sounds or whatever. But that's kind of the main maybe function for sound in my view when it's part of a bigger performing arts piece or whatever.
And for your own practice, isn't it just easier to go with like a mic and record sounds from the environment, because you have chosen the path of generating them in a way, like recreating them?
Yeah. That's been the whole.
Why do you make your life more difficult?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I've always sort of I've always thought about it kind of like a like if you think about a photographer and then a painter, I guess I'm more on the painter side,
Yeah.
where I think a lot of the fun comes and a lot of the interest comes from like trying to imitate a sound but not getting exactly to the actual sound, and then the utilizing the imperfection and the things that differentiate it from the real sound. So I've always I mean, for this project at least, that's just been kind of the main thing that's been interesting to me, and which I've tried to pursue. And I have never had any interest in recording stuff, like doing field recordings or anything else. I just like to do everything electronically, and then that's I don't know, it's just something that I've been interested in for quite a bit now. But also I think it's of course the end result is going to sound different when you do it, when you try to imitate something instead of actually capturing the real thing, and that's
I mean, it's just a different approach to creating something.
Yeah. But it's true that it would be easier to record than but then you lose a lot of the control, of course, and you can't make the it's impossible to make the recorded sounds, like for example, transform into sounds in the same way that you can make synthesized sounds then transform into something else. So it's a whole different, I guess, what's the word? Like a whole different
approach?
Valine. What's that in English?
Valine.
Like a different tool.
Tool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
I guess. So you can do different things with it, and then, and also the process is very different, of course. You never have to go into the woods to make bird sounds with synths.
You can just sit on the chair and
yes, exactly. Okay. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but that's how it is.
Can you tell me a bit more how your process goes?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm just going to have to talk about these natural sound works now, even though I'm leaving them behind, but that's the only thing I know at the moment. So well, in the beginning I had to spend, like when I started the project, or the sort of approach that I used quite a bit of time just to imitate the birds and just get them very close to the real birds, or get as close as possible to the real birds. And I did that all with the computer, so no like hardware synthesizers were involved at that point. It was just listening to the birds over and over again, and then trying to sort of draw the lines into the software so that the synthesizer the software synthesizer makes the sound as close to the real one as possible. So that was kind of the first phase of the whole thing, I guess. And then I've mostly been using the bird sounds that I made like during the first year, I guess, in a lot of the works that have come after that as well, because it was tedious stuff. And I think I also I went for the most sort of songbirdy birds that I know first, and then those were kind of, like some birds just chirp very short snippets of sound. Yeah. And I was more interested in trying to come up with the sort of or copy the birds that are more singing oriented. Like they have longer phrases and a lot of pitch variation and kind of. Do
you have like bands of birds, or is it usually a solo or bird artist?
Well, actually, yeah, a bit of both. I guess in the beginning, I think I did more of bird bands, where I used all of the sounds that I made like in conjunction with each other. And then also this, like the latest exhibition, for example, with the hardware synthesizers, that was very much like a group.
That was a big
band exhibition sort of thing.
Almost an orchestra.
Yeah, but then with a lot of the surround sound works that I've made, and with the records also, there's a lot of phases where there's just one bird and that's kind of metamorphosing into something else, and so a bit of both. Yeah, there's kind of the approach of trying to come up with a whole natural environmental soundscape, and then sort of zooming in on one species or one machine.
So have you had other types of natural sounds created? Like,
Well, I've made quite a bit of like insect sounds, which have been more, I guess, general insect sounds. So I haven't really gotten too deep into those in the sense that I would have studied actual species and trying to come up with those. But you know, insects are even higher up on the frequency spectrum than birds are. So we're kind of just here
sometimes something.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very, I guess it's pretty hard to tell them apart from each other. I mean, I'm sure like people who are into them can tell them apart, but for the purposes of this project, I guess I've just needed some grasshoppery sounds up in the frequency spectrum. So I've made quite a bit of those, and there's also something like I love the higher part of our hearing, how things sound up there when it's just something that's very high up, and there's something like magical about that somehow when the only sounds that are happening are very high up in the frequency spectrum. And it probably has something to do with like how we maybe it has something to do with the crickets and grasshoppers and everything. Like they're very active at night, I think. Yeah. Or I mean, if you think about the soundscape at night, you just think about crickets and grasshoppers, and maybe that's something that's, you know, it takes you to that sort of night ambience sort of mind frame, which is maybe there's something mystical about it that's appealing to me. And then I've made some like weather phenomena sounds, like thunder and babbling brooks and that sort of thing. Pretty basic stuff, I guess. Like they're often stuff that you kind of stumble upon when just fiddling around with synthesizers. Like you can accidentally get pretty close to like running water and that sort of things when you're dealing with like the classical analog synthesizer sort of machines.
Have you tried to sonify somehow? Because you were talking about high on the spectrum there, where we can hear. Have you tried to imagine how it would sound like beyond that? Like
beyond the hearing?
Yeah.
No, not really. That's something it's been in the back of my mind, and that's something maybe that I should actually go out into the real world to record something, because I'm like, there's a lot of stuff going on up there that we don't hear, but which we can record and then slow down and then hear it. And that's, I mean, I'm sure it's been done a lot, like people recording bats and whatever.
Done.
Yeah. But that's something that might be sort of, maybe if I feel the need to make some more nature works in the future, then maybe that's something that I should sort of dig into, because it's fascinating that there's stuff going on there that we can't hear, and then we kind of can hear it by pitching it down and then hearing like a slowed down version of it.
Yeah, to me personally, that has been always super fascinating, how there is so much that it's just beyond us.
Yeah. Yeah, also in the...
And just imagining what that could be is something like I'm very much into that. That's why I'm
it's kind of the same thing as like the scale thing, like all the like atomic, like all the microscopic things out of our reach without like very precise tools. And it's fascinating that it's all happening and we're dependent on it completely, but it's completely out of our... like we can't reach it with our own senses alone. It's a nice world. And also I made I was kind of somehow I was quite proud of. I made the second record, and the middle part of the record is mostly just like electronic versions of city noises and like human machine-made noises. And it's I mean, it sounds and it feels like even weirder. A weirder thing to do than imitate birds with synthesizers, which I somehow understand, but I have no idea why I did it for the record, but I'm proud of it. Maybe just because of that, because I still don't have a proper sense of why or what it sounds like. So yeah, that's something interesting also, is to sort of mimic the machine world that we've created.
It's a constant mimic of something.
Yeah.
Machines are made to mimic the nature, and then you mimic machines that mimic the nature.
Yeah, it's a long loop. We'll see how far it goes.
You said record. Do you have you done it like as an actual record?
No,
Just
they're
digital?
just digital. Yeah, they're quite digital in nature. So, I mean, there's a lot of the high frequency stuff, which I guess wouldn't translate super well into like a vinyl record.
Oh, really? There is a limit to what you can.
Well, I think they're like the higher. I have to check this before you air the episode because I'm gonna get laughed at if I'm wrong. But
Okay.
Okay, I played some synths. But I think I think they're like very high frequency range is not so good because the needle has a limit as to how fast it can vibrate.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Never thought about it.
But yeah, they're just only digital, no CDs either. Just on the internet.
Why not CDs or some other medium that you can?
I don't know.
Somehow.
I
Or
think,
do people no longer at all buy these kinds of physical?
Well, I think people
devices?
would buy it more if it was physical instead of just digital. But I think I just didn't get around to it. Just laziness and I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure what comes when one decides to go in that area. Completely have no idea how.
Yeah,
that
I think it has to do with just making everything myself. Then it's just something that I couldn't be bothered with because I thought the main thing is that they're, you can listen to them somewhere, and that's the thing. I wasn't. Maybe I wasn't expecting a lot of sales anyway. Like no matter what the format is, I think it's niche enough to sort of not be too worried about
sound
the
art
sales.
is still pretty niche.
Yeah, it is.
Do you somehow involve friends or family in your personal sound works, or other people, like some way?
Well, yeah. I mean, I make like I've always had some form of a band in my life. I guess at the moment we've got this sort of my friend makes I guess pop-oriented songs that we try to produce and finish, but we were super slow in it. But like we have that at the moment going on, so it's two of my friends. We have this sort of band, and then but in addition to that, not too much. I don't think. Yeah, I'm pretty stubborn in being in charge, I guess.
Or maybe you just haven't come across some part that you would need some other person to.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, I have a moment where I really miss doing stuff with other people, but somehow, yeah, I think I want to do like other things with other people, but the sound art kind of makes sense for me to do by myself. It's also so focused on like one pretty narrow-minded approach, or at least it's been that until recently, that maybe it's just been clear to make it, do everything myself and then sort of be done with it.
Yeah, and if you have a band, of course, you can channel
some of the energy there. Yeah.
So do you perform like with the band somewhere, like?
Well, no, we've had like a few gigs, but it's been a while now, and everybody has so much going on that it's kind of like it's very much been a hobby. But we're trying to. We kind of just finished one track actually, so it's going to be out there soon, and who knows, maybe we find the power in ourselves to arrange a gig at some point.
Yeah.
It's been, I think, a year ago we had a gig. We did this sort of private gig for our friends, which was pretty nice. I got sick just before it, so I was very not feeling well at the gig, but
it happened.
Yeah, it happened still. But it's super nice to play together. That's something that I kind of I miss quite a bit in like every now and then. So maybe we should get around to it more. Your
work is basically all digital. Does social media have some role in the promotion of that work, or what for you?
I've tried to post stuff on Instagram. That's the only channel that I've been able to bother with. And I mean, social media is not very good for promoting sound related work.
What do people do usually in that situation, like sound people?
I don't know. I guess they just try to somehow somehow cope with it. But you know, like a lot of people are just scrolling through stuff without sounds on, and I've always kind of taken the approach that even I mean I make like trailers for my works so that there's something visual and you know a few lines of text and whatever, so that I can at least convey something through just the visuals. But even those I make like with the idea that you have to listen to the sound to kind of get the idea. So I've tried to do that, but other than that, it's I've been very unactive over there, which is probably why it's also quite hard to get people to come in large amounts to like experience the sound art things. But it, like you said, it's a very niche area of art. I mean, you'd had to spend a lot of time sort of figuring out the social media and how to best
it's a lot.
Best manage it, and I think that hasn't been on my priority list, even if it means getting much less people interested in it. There's a limited amount of time, and I want to use it rather on the making the artworks as good as possible for the people that do come, instead of trying to sort of get a broader audience and then, I don't know, using half the time for social media statistics or whatever you have to do to get ahead over there. It's it's a tough world, I guess. Or not appealing to me at all to try to really kind of make it over there.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that wholesome social media platform to come along where you can sort of, I don't know, somehow make it feel like you're actually a part of some social network instead of in this weird, I don't know, social media is so weird.
I mean,
it's not like you have to,
It seems a bit in the reality how social encounters happen. Like, even if in the physical life you have a group of, your own little bubble, and on social media, I think it's also
it's also
like that. You have your own little bubble. I mean, there are many people who have giant bubbles. Like whole clouds. But I think the majority is a bit like that.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure there are like tools to view how your posts like spread, but if you want to like let people know that something's happening, you can put it on social media, but there's no like, I have no idea who's going to see it. And
that's the constant battle with the algorithm that people do all the time.
So it's a whole other, like you have to make social media your profession, I think, if you want to
or
really make it over there.
Somebody to do it for you.
True.
At least now here, I don't know how active they are, but there's the Sound Art Society.
Äänitaiteen seura, which is
the online Marco.
It's a nice. I mean, they've had a lot of events now. I think they had. I mean, I was playing at their, like, when they started, or they had the first weekend there, and it was very nice. Like, it's a nice venue, and I think they're very hospitable, and
they are both guests of my podcast.
Great. But that's been very nice to see that there's kind of a space dedicated to mostly sound art. I mean, there's been Akusmata before, which is a gallery by Petri Kuljuntausta, which is still running, I think. But
I've never been there. I know about it, but I've never been there.
Yeah, it's in Töölö. It's in a basement. It's actually very sort of atmospheric. I like the venue, but I think it's good that we also have another one now, and they seem like they're pretty active at the moment. So there's lots of stuff going on there, and they have workshops, I think. Like with electronics or with our Arduinos, for example, and that sort of thing. So I'm happy that they're doing that thing, and it's a nice space and a nice location as well.
Yeah, and then I guess gradually, slowly, this kind of activities build the scene. Yeah,
hopefully so, and also it makes it seem like there is actually a scene when there's when their space is dedicated to just sound art, because mostly it's just part of, like, you can make sound art exhibitions into visual art galleries, and I mean it's part of that scene, of course, as well, but it's nice to also have a dedicated place where the focus is on sound.
Okay, well, let's maybe have a few words about the studio space, because this is a very nice, cozy studio. I mean, I haven't been to really many sound studios, so I couldn't compare too much. But I think the sound of this episode will be pretty good.
Yeah, let's hope so. That will be.
Because there's some nice soundproofing.
Yeah, we moved into this house, I think, almost 3 years ago now already. Wow, time flies. But anyway, it took me. This was like a garage, and it was very sort of dirty and a very garage-like space. And so it took me quite a while to. I didn't do any of the renovation myself, but we made a new floor and fixed, like, there was a big garage door, but now that's been taken away and there's just a normal door and a wall instead of it. And I think it's quite nice now.
It doesn't have any garage vibes at all?
No, not anymore. I'm pretty happy with how it is now.
How big is it?
And it's,
do you know?
I think 15 square meters.
15, yeah.
So it's in a way more than what you need for the actual working, which is just very stationary for me at least, like just sitting in the same place all the time. But it's nice to have some space for the stuff, and then it's also acoustically good that it's not too small, and it's in my home, so that's quite useful.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, but with a separate entrance, which somehow makes it a bit more separate, which I think is good. Yeah, this one is really. It's kind of one of those ghost sounds. It's
like a cat that you have lying there, and you accidentally step on its tail.
Yeah.
So now you're sharing the space with your daughter, basically.
Yes, more and more. She wants to come in pretty often.
Have you had the spaces before that you have shared with other people?
Yeah, at some point, but not too much. Actually, I've always thought it's pretty important to have the space to myself, so that I can be there whenever I want.
Yeah.
I guess. I had a few places in Vallila, which I rented out from people, and those were both so that I had them all to myself. And at one point I was in this shared studio thing, but then that was very short-lived. I think I've been by myself pretty much. I've only had like a studio space for 4 or 5 years maybe now. Maybe not even that.
How important is it to have a studio?
Well, it's very important for me to have an environment where the acoustics are kind of controlled. I mean, this is far from a professional studio still, but it's very important to have like a good listening environment where you can have good stereo sound and like not too much environmental sound coming in. We've got quite a bit of traffic going right next to the house, so I get some of the cars in here, but then you kind of get used to that, so it's okay. But yeah, it's very important, and I it's important for me to kind of to have the things as ready as possible, so that when I come in I don't have to use a lot of time to sort of start plugging things in or whatever. And but the main thing is the listening environment, that there's a good stereo sound.
So you don't use headphones here when you're here? I
don't really use headphones anymore, no. I used to use a lot of headphones because I had less favorable environments, but now I've almost completely left them out. Just checking some things on like the AirPods every now and then, but that's almost it. Speakers are so much more nice.
And what's the most important thing for you in the studio? What's the best element about it?
Well, I mean, I almost have to say the acoustics are the best thing, that they're controlled enough to actually hear what you're doing. That's something and it's something that I took I'm sure a lot of people take quite a long time to realize it, because it's something you don't really, if you're like mixing stuff in a bad environment, you don't really necessarily realize the effect of the environment or the room. But then when you remove the room from the equation as much as possible, which is kind of the idea with all the acoustic treatment, then suddenly it's much easier to make decisions and like trust your ears when you're working instead of having to guess.
Have you made these panels yourself, or have you?
Yeah, I
use
made
it like a
mostly. Yeah, all the flat ones I've made myself. Then the bigger ones in the corner I bought from someone second hand. But I had this like woodworking summer 2 summers ago where I made a lot of them. It's just a frame of wood and wool inside, and then like rock wool inside, and then the plain fabric stretched on top of it. So it's a very simple thing, but it took me quite a while. I have very limited handicraft skills. That's like a polite way to put it.
I mean, if you're really not used to doing anything on the daily basis, how would you?
It's horrible. Like the lack of sort of like practical knowledge is very yeah. Maybe we shouldn't go into it. It's embarrassing.
No, I mean it's very natural if you never needed it. And why would you have that kind of a skill?
Yeah, synthesizers are a different thing, especially if you don't build them yourself.
Do you have everything in the studio, like all the?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't really have a huge amount of stuff because I do most of my work, especially the sort of sound art work, I do mostly in the computer, and like there's
probably a few hard drives.
Yeah, I think 2. Not
Yeah.
too many. Sound doesn't take so much space.
That is true.
After all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have everything here, and it's quite sort of contained, so everything is nearby, and if I need something from the shelves, it's close by, and yeah, it's quite nice at the moment. And I got this big desk, which is great. Like, I've been so happy with it. Like, it's a proper big desk where you can sort of, it feels kind of sturdy and
Serious.
Professional when you go sit next to it, and then you can start making funny bleepy noises. You know, with a real serious attitude. This one's been a good purchase as well.
Is it like a specifically for sounds, or?
Yeah, it's a sound desk. Like, there's this tray for a keyboard over here, and then you get these. You can buy these rack things, which is this over here, which you can kind of just
attach to it. Okay,
attach to the table, and then there's some holes for the cables. Very important.
I mean, for the amount of cables that there is, I bet it's important.
Yeah, it makes things a bit easier and somehow not so messy.
It's not messy at all. Like,
yeah, now I'm doing pretty well with the cables at the moment, so they're all tucked away. And again.
Oh, the cat. Do you go to exhibitions when there is something sound or visual art?
Yeah, I try to go. I think I still maybe go more often to theater performances, but I do try to sort of, well, now with 2 little children, there's a limited amount of time that I have to kind of stroll around the city looking for art. but I do try to take some time every now and then to go to museums and galleries, but I'm definitely not like super active goer, so it's mainly if I see something that interests me, and especially if it's something that's somehow connected to sound, then usually those are.
Where would you usually go?
Well, I try to go to Kiasma every now and then a lot of the things in Amos Rex have been interesting to me, so I'm more of, I guess, a big museum sort of type. There was just Ryoji, how do you pronounce it?
Ryoji
Ikeda, which is like my most favorite artist ever, I guess. So I went to see his thing, obviously, and it was, I love it. I just love his works. And but then also, I try to go to I've been to Forum Box quite a few times. There's been a lot of sound-oriented stuff in there.
Yeah, they have the media box with which usually is a video
also
piece
that,
with some sound.
Yeah, I've enjoyed those quite a bit, and I just went to Myymälä 2 for the first time, I think, which is
They
kind
have
of
sound events
Yeah.
pretty often also.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I went. They have a lot of concerts in there. I think. Like
Lately,
I see them.
especially. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was nice. And then what else? Yeah. Well, anything that comes up.
Yeah.
And in for theater, I just try to see almost everything that goes in Q theater. That's my thing. They have
Theater is
such a good-
another area that I have almost never explored. I have to admit.
You just take a Q theater, go there.
Q theater.
Q, yeah.
Where is it?
It's in Töl,
Okay.
quite close to the church in the rock. What do you call it in English?
The Rock Church.
The Rock
I
Church.
think it's the Rock Church.
Yeah, sounds like a rock church.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's over there, and they have. I mean, they almost always have like amazing performances there. So I can very much recommend them.
Then I have to check it out.
Yeah.
I just recently, for the first time, went to a Finnish theater play in Finnish at the National Theatre.
Which one was it?
It was the girls. I mean, how do I even translate this?
The girls that think they're alone. That one?
Yes, that one. Girls that think they are alone.
I guess that's the name in Finnish, at least.
Yeah. It was something.
For girls that think they are alone, maybe.
Naisille something.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. That's been a huge hit, right? I didn't manage to get tickets for it, but I'm not sure if they still have performances going on.
Probably. I mean, wouldn't they have until there are people who want to go?
Yeah, I guess so.
It was full when I went there. Though.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a huge hit, which is very nice.
Yeah.
It seemed like a great performance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really so much into theater, obviously, but I did enjoy that one very much, and I was surprised how much I understood.
Yeah, they obviously don't have like a text,
No.
like a translation. No, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that's not related.
Yeah.
Are there some artists, sounds or otherwise, that have been an influence for you, or that you admire their work and follow it?
Well, yeah. Well, Ikeda, like I just mentioned,
Yeah.
Ryoji Ikeda has been very sort of influential, and you can definitely hear that in my works. Hopefully not too much, but quite a bit, I think. And I had a big Mika Vainio phase. He passed away, I think, 5-6 years ago. It's been not too long, but he's like a Finnish electronic music icon, I guess, like an underground sort of electronic music maker that's very, very influential to a lot of people. And his work is it's like very sparse and maybe you could say dark, but it's also very, very emotional in very appealing ways. So I've listened to his work quite a bit. I don't know. I think I've been a bit like sort of single-minded in that I had this phase where I couldn't really listen to anything else than like this one work by Ikeda, for example. Like I just listened to that for like 3 times a week, and then that was mostly it. And
how about music-wise? What kind of music do you?
Well, like I said, I've had a strong progressive rock background, but that's kind of like I still listen to it every now and then, but it's kind of most of it is in a funny way. It's kind of like I guess you kind of grow out of a lot of things, and maybe that's what's happened to that. So I listen to a lot of like electronic. I have to say that I mostly listen to like electronic dance music nowadays when I'm like if I'm commuting or whatever. It's just a constant stream of like techno beats, which kind of, I don't know, it's a form of meditation, I guess, in a way, because it's so monotonous and so repetitive. And
Probably.
And it's very sound oriented music, I guess. It's all about the kind of like the tone of the sounds and that sort of thing. So I listen to a lot of that. And then I have a very I guess for this like progressive thing, Pekka Pohjola, who is was a Finnish bass player and composer. I listened to quite a bit of his works, especially at home. They're very melodic and kind of like instrumental, sort of progressive rock-ish, but not there's not much of the rock in them. It's more like just beautiful melodies and evolving structures, and yeah, that's something that I enjoy a lot. And then I used to listen to more like I guess not experimental maybe, but sort of like very very minimalistic sound art stuff, or sound art, but like electronic music stuff. But that's kind of, I don't know, I haven't been so interested in it lately. Maybe there's something about life with two kids, you know, that when you listen to music, you need something that's got a bit more danger to it, I guess. Maybe you could say it that way.
Danger.
Yeah, or some sort of form of like, I don't know, something that reminds you of like more about the pulse of the city than you know, going to the playground. Maybe. or walking out in the woods. So yeah, I think I am, you know, most of the sound I make is quite sort of toned down and mellow and ambient sort of thing, but then I actually like to listen to quite sort of more driving stuff. I also enjoy some like heavy metal stuff like Opeth, which is a progressive metal band. They're still somehow very, very, every time I put them on, it's like, wow, this music is so brilliant.
I have only heard of them, but I haven't listened to their music.
Yeah, their older records are fantastic. Like there's also very kind of, I guess, maybe not sorrowful, but kind of, you know, there's like this very melancholic, lamenting sort of tone to them, and then you've got the very like high energy, aggressive metal thing going along with that. And I find the contrast very appealing over there.
Are there some other places where you gather inspiration?
Well, I guess a lot of just going, like I like to take walks or go cycling. That's I think the best way almost to get ideas. If you need ideas, then I think that's a great way to get them, more so than I think listening to music or yeah, I think I find ideas more in like the moments of emptiness rather than the moments where you're like listening to something or watching a play or whatever. I think, yeah, just going out.
That's very connected to the classical, you know, under the shower.
Yeah.
Ideas coming there, because yeah, your brain needs some time to calm down and rest.
Yeah. You need the silence to sort of feel something.
Yeah.
Make something into it. But yeah, I think just going out and then leaving your phone away and that sort of thing helps a lot.
Well, thank you very much for this very smooth conversation. I have to say that it was super easy to talk with you.
Okay,
and,
great.
Yeah, and good luck with the secretive, mysterious project.
Thank you. Mystical.